Every film industry seems to have a dark underbelly. It seems to have countless unexplained murders, mysterious disappearances, and ties to high profile criminal activity. Bollywood is the same way. From Sri Devi to Jia Khan, from Pratyusha Banerjee to Raj Kiran, crime seems to seep through our industry, leaving behind death and devastation. This is the story of one such crime that shook Bollywood. The story of a family massacred. This is the story of Laila Khan. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, a show where we dive deep into some of the craziest cases from around South Asia. I'm your host Aishwarya.
And I'm Aryaan.
And the case that I have for you today is one that jolted Bollywood.
Aishwarya, there was an update in this case, I think a week ago.
Absolutely.
And our DMs, like always, are filled with, guys, you got to cover this case, you got to cover the update.
Yep. And there's an update coming out tomorrow as well.
So here we are.
For this case, I'm taking you to the year 2012. Specifically in June of 2012, when Jammu and Kashmir police were interrogating a man named Parvez Tak, a local forest contractor from the region who was caught after a 3-week operation by the J&K police. He was arrested because the J&K police had found a Mitsubishi Outlander outside his shop, the same Outlander they believed was used in the 2011 Delhi High Court bombings. Even though this car was outside Parvez's shop, it was actually registered to the name of a woman, Parvez's wife, Shelina Khan. But Shelina Khan had been missing for the last year. There was no trace of her. Not only Shelina Khan, but her younger daughter Laila Khan, her twin children Imran and Zara, her older daughter Hashmina, and her niece Reshma were all missing for the last 1 year. But this was a woman who possibly might have been involved in a national terror attack. Finding her was necessary for the police. So the police arrested Parvez. In his interrogation, Parvez revealed that he knew where Laila Khan was. Quote, Tak told us that Laila's husband Asif Khan had taken his wife and her family to a forest area 120 kilometers from Mumbai and killed them there in February last year, the DIG said according to the Deccan Herald. But then he took this statement back. Then he claimed the family was in Dubai. Then later he claimed he was sure they had gone to some African country. And then he was back to saying he had no idea where they were. Finally, Parvez was transferred to Mumbai, where his interrogation for the disappearance of his wife Shelina and her family began. To the police in Mumbai, Parvez begins to tell a story of a gruesome mass murder he committed that, on the face of it, sounds like a lie. The police couldn't trust him because of how many times his story had changed.
Aishwarya, how many times does it happen that somebody is making a confession that, yes, I am the killer, and because they have been the boy that cried wolf on previous occasions, the police is like, no man,
I need proof that you're
you
the
killed.
killer. I know, which is so funny, but it happens like ridiculously often that the police,
Yeah. Speaking of, the police forcing people to do stuff, right? And getting it out of them. Subscribe to us. That red little button there. Just subscribe. I didn't have a great cue to beg you guys.
So he made one.
I just made one.
A terrible cue.
And it should work. Please subscribe. 80% of our viewers aren't subscribers. If some of you can put in that little effort, our channel can grow at a much faster rate. So
Parvez Tak was confessing to a murder, but the police couldn't trust him because he had been lying all this while. What was this gruesome murder Parvez was talking about? And where was his wife and her children? Maybe you've noticed that I've been saying Parvez, his wife Shelina, and her children. To understand why they are not his children also, you have to understand that this storyline is a little bit like Indrani Mukherjee's, because Parvez was Shelina's third husband, while all her children were born to her and her first husband. But to make any sense of the story Parvez was telling the police, we have to go back to the time when Parvez's wife Shelina was born in 1961. Born to a small, middle-class Muslim family in Mumbai, Shelina grew up watching her father trying to make it as an actor in Bollywood. But like millions who were trying in this industry, he never succeeded. According to an article in India Today, his only memorable role was the small part of a dying soldier in Chetan Anand's Hakikat in 1964.
That's such an apposite role to sum up a dead acting career.
Yeah,
that your only role was a dying soldier.
Yep, and that was it. Despite his not so successful work as an actor, though, he raised his children with love to the best of his abilities. But this middle class life full of love was less than ideal to Shelina. She wanted more. Quote, she was very hi-fi. We are very simple. But she was the prettiest among us. This is how a sister, Albana, who herself lives in a middle class suburb in Mumbai, describes her. To make her life herself, to move away from home, to put herself out there in the real world, and to gain the recognition she desired, Shelina ended up running away from home with a man named Nadir Shah Patel when she was not even 20. She eventually ended up marrying Nadir and having 4 children with him. Their oldest child, Hashmina Patel, younger daughter Laila Khan, who was born Reshma Patel, and 2 twin children named Imran and Zara Patel. Nadir loved his family. He cared for and provided for his children, and marrying Shelina was his dream come true. She was a gorgeous, well-spoken woman, and she was his life partner now. But things changed over the course of their marriage. After being married for about 10 years, the couple separated, and Shelina eventually went on to marry a different man, her second husband, Asif Sheikh. The two bought their own apartment in Oshiwara in Mumbai and lived there with all of Shelina's children. Shelina herself was working as an event manager, earning her own living, but simultaneously, in true Kardashian style, she was working on getting her daughters into the film industry. She first got her oldest daughter, Hashmina, into a movie in 2006, a movie titled Hello, Kaun Hai? And then she got Laila in a movie in 2008. This movie, the one that Laila was going to star in, was a movie called Wafa, a deadly love story. This movie was directed by none other than Rakhi Sawant and her brother Rakesh Sawant.
She directs movies also?
Apparently.
What does that amazing woman
not do? I actually
Kudos
have
to
some
her,
amount
dude.
of respect for
Yeah.
Rakhi Sawant. Yeah, go
She's
for
everywhere.
it. Everywhere.
A little too much, but okay.
Now, however cringe or B-grade this movie title may sound to you, it was going to be the movie starring the Rajesh Khanna in it. And that is no joke. He's popularly known as the first superstar of Hindi cinema after he consecutively starred in a record 15 solo hero successful films between 1969 and 1971, according to The National. He was the highest paid actor in Hindi cinema throughout the 1970s and 1980s, and when he finally decided to marry Dimple Kapadia, there were renowned actresses who tried to kill themselves. Twinkle Khanna is his daughter. So it seemed like Laila Khan had gotten her big break in her first ever movie. But surprise, surprise, the movie was a complete and total flop.
Wait, what was the name again of the movie?
Wafa, a love story.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think the name has a lot to do with...
A lot to
I'm
do
not going to blame the director.
Yeah.
The name.
Or Rajesh Khanna or Laila
Rajesh.
Khan. It
It's
may
the
just
name.
be the name.
Yeah.
But Laila had more movies lined up. She was modeling, she was showing up at private events, and for the first time in a very long time, it seemed like there was money in the lives of Shelina and her children. In fact, people who know Shelina claimed Shelina now just spontaneously took trips to other countries just to shop there and come back. The family ended up buying a huge, gorgeous farmhouse in Igatpuri, which is about 125 kilometers to the outskirts of Mumbai. But to everyone on the outside, as I'm sure it does to you all, this level of wealth seemed disproportionate to the work that the family was doing. The one flop movie and 2 future contracts for Laila and 1 flop movie for Hashmina did not add up to the ability to fly to South Africa to shop and buy a huge farmhouse outside Mumbai.
Aishwarya, one thing I learned in Mumbai now that I've started living there is initially the first few films of an actor do not actually earn them a lot of money.
A lot of money, yeah.
The whole point the producer says is, we're the one that are giving you
Launching
a movie.
you, so to say,
Launching
yeah.
you, right? You're going to make money from the brand deals that will come eventually. So I was really surprised to learn when some, like, now really big actors, when I asked them what their, first pay was, because I was like, oh, you must have been paid 50 lakhs, 1 crore. And they said they were paid like 5 lakhs. Or 10 lakhs and for working on projects by
that
the biggest
big
producers.
and
So this is very disproportionate to their lifestyle.
Agreed.
Because I don't think they would have earned that
and
much.
And even without this fact, it's disproportionate. Yeah, it's just weird. For example, one report suggests that the family had assets over rupees 3 crores. The Gatpuri bungalow was worth over 70 lakh. The Oshiwara flat was worth over 1.5 crore. Shelina owned a shop in Andheri's posh Lokhandwala complex worth rupees 40 lakh and a flat at Meera Road worth rupees 50 lakh. But just for context, Laila's pay for her one movie was, just like Aryaan said, 3.5 lakh. An article says, curiously, all of these properties were gifted to Shelina and her daughters by, quote, benefactors.
How do you get these benefactors? Where do you apply?
I have not the slightest. Maybe some underworld connections here and there.
Yeah, but do we know who these benefactors are?
Oh, we're getting to that.
Okay.
The Oshiwara flat was gifted to Hashmina, aka Afreen, who was 31, by an elderly US-based person when she turned 18, is what the article says. Now, this is all very super suspect. This is but one of the reasons that the Maharashtra Anti-Terror Squad believes the family had some questionable ties to terror organizations outside India, such as Laila's alleged connections to Lashkar-e-Taiba and her roles in providing terrorist information on the city of Mumbai.
Aishwarya, again, I'll just chip in here because some of my favorite actors in Bollywood have terrorism claims against them, because there's a lot of urban legends around this, right? I'm not going to go into names, but are these hard proven facts, or is this inside? Is it gossip?
I think I wouldn't consider it gossip when the anti-terror squad of the country says this person has like suspicious amounts of money and we tie some of that money back to terrorist organizations. I don't think that's
gossip. But what's the tie? Is the tie that the same people funding Laila are funding terrorism activities, or that Laila is directly related to terrorism activities?
No, that the money that Laila has comes from providing intel on the city of Mumbai.
I see.
To terror organizations.
That's a big claim.
Which is a big claim. And we don't always tend to have full information on these claims because of how sensitive they are to...
Fair.
Right? So we never know.
I'm just playing devil's advocate, because you and I know, these actors have a barrage of claims levied against them.
Sure, but to me, it's not like... Not all actors have these claims, right?
That's
Even
true.
Very famous actors don't need to have these claims. And so when an actor does, and it comes from an industry or it comes from an organization like the anti-terror squad of the country, that to me, I wouldn't say that those are organizations that will gossip.
I know you and I see differently on this.
Bit,
we've had these debates before, but save that for some other time.
But what Aryaan and I talked about wasn't all. Even the man that Laila was allegedly married to had ties to the banned Bangladeshi organization named Harkat ul Jihad al-Islami. Even Rakesh Sawant, Laila's director, thought she was in with some shady people. For example, one evening, Laila had invited Sawant to her bungalow in Mumbai, where inside her house were a number of Arab men. These men wanted to invest 20 crores in Sawant's movie, but he refused because of how off it all sounded. Now, whether these Arab men were just regular rich investors or shady people with terrorism links, we don't know. This is all a matter of speculation. But there has never been any official proof of their involvement in any terror organization or activity. The most significant of the proofs is the fact that Shelina's car was known to be tied to the 2011 terror attacks. Regardless of where this money came from, though, the entire family was utilizing it to the fullest. In fact, Shelina's husband, Asif Sheikh, too, was enjoying this newfound wealth and prosperity in the family. But little did he know that his wife was falling in love with a different man. The man who was arrested by J&K police at the beginning of this episode. Parvez Tak. He was a man of big and significant political connections and the wealthy lifestyle, just like that of Shelina's. But he was also a shady man in sort of the ways that Shelina was. What I mean by that is he seemed to have money he hadn't worked for. For example, according to India Today, quote, he borrowed rupees 10 lakh from locals and contested the 2008 assembly polls from the Inderwal constituency in Doda on a ticket from the Nationalist Congress Party. He left Kishtwar later that year when the lenders began knocking on his doors. End quote. Then in 2010, he showed up at the doorstep of a retired Indian naval officer, 86-year-old Gurdial Singh, who was living in Hoshiarpur. Quote, he came to us with his wife and 2 young daughters, claiming to be a Kashmiri refugee. He told me that his family had been wiped out in an attack on his village. End quote. He ended up staying with the couple for 2 weeks, borrowing 2.2 lakhs from him, and then vanishing, never to be seen in Hoshiarpur again.
Scamming any innocent person is bad, infuriates me. But if you're scamming an elderly army man,
I know. There's just something about that I know will irk so many people.
Oh, brother, you could be accused
There's a special
of
place in hell for you.
Murder, and I'll be deeply infuriated by this fact.
Yeah, I agree.
This just like, sometimes murder is done in heat of the moment or something, and so even good people.
This is a test of character, though.
Murder
is not always a test of character.
I mean, murder. If you murdered somebody,
you're not a good person.
You're going to prison.
Yeah.
But it's not always crimes of passion.
Absolutely
are different from
people change, people become better. This is a test of character. But regardless of how shady his past may seem to us, slowly and slowly Parvez got closer to Shelina and the two fell in love with each other. Shelina divorced her husband of 20 years and got married for a third time to a man more than a decade younger than her in December of 2010. He was a handsome man, and many claimed that initially it was his head-turning good looks that drew Shelina close to him. But by no account was this new marriage a happy one. How could it be when just 2 years after his marriage, Parvez would be sitting in the office of the Mumbai police, admitting to brutally murdering his wife and all of her children? Parvez sat in the Mumbai police station in 2012, clinging on to his innocence for a while. But the police knew something was wrong. Laila's biological father, Shelina's first husband, Nadir Shah, had gone to the police multiple times in the past 1 year, claiming his ex-wife and children were missing, that something was wrong and that they were not responding. In fact, Nadir Shah had even filed a missing persons report in March of 2011 for the entire family, but the police didn't do much. Quote, the police are lax and were not interested in locating my children, he said. He wasn't the only one looking for the family. Rakhi Sawant's brother Rakesh was the director of Laila's upcoming movie, but she was nowhere to be found. Laila did shoot some of the scenes for his film Jinnat, which means she didn't just decide to back out of the movie, but after those few scenes, she just disappeared. Rakesh Sawant really liked Laila. He had seen her at an audition in 2004 and then decided to cast her for his own film. He said, quote, she did not say no to the intimate scenes with Rajesh Khanna. She was nice, calm and involved, but Shelina was loud and domineering and regularly interfered in Laila's life and work, end quote. But even Sawant's missing persons report was initially ignored by the police. But it wasn't just these two men who had tried to find the family. Shelina's elder sister, Meher Akhtar, had decided to drive down to the family's Igatpuri farmhouse herself in September of 2011, 6 months after they had all just vanished, just to see if she could find any clues or any traces of them all. And the bungalow there looked like a scene from a horror movie. Firstly, the bungalow was burnt. The house was destroyed. There were 2 watchmen taking care of the house, and both of them gave 2 very different, conflicting accounts of the fire, with one saying he saw it happen 15 days ago and the other saying he saw it happen 2 months ago. Not just that though, while walking out of the house through the village that surrounded the bungalow, she noticed the furniture from the bungalow in the houses of the tribal homes in the village. The tribal said it was Shelina's second husband, Asif Ahmed, who had given them the furniture. Meher said, quote, we still do not know who started the fire and why. Shelina's mother, 85-year-old Kaniz Fatma, came forward to say, I would be satisfied with a glimpse of my children. If you spot Tak anywhere, shoot him. With all of this in mind, the police now knew they needed to double down on Parvez. When they ramped up their interrogation, Parvez finally admitted it. He said he killed them all, Laila, all her siblings, and her mother, and buried them all in the backyard of their Igatpuri farmhouse. He had committed this crime more than a year ago, he says, in February of 2011. It was the 30th of January 2011 when the entire family sat in their two cars and drove to Igatpuri. This included 50-year-old Shelina, 29-year-old Laila, 31-year-old Hashmina, 21-year-old twins Zara and Imran, 20-year-old Reshma, and 35-year-old Parvez. At the Igatpuri farmhouse, he says he got into a heated argument with his wife, Shelina. These fights between the two were frequent. His wife had a habit of beginning extramarital affairs with other men much younger than herself, he told the cops. The argument between the two that day was about her infidelity, specifically her closeness to her second husband Asif Sheikh, at least according to Parvez. But it wasn't just that. Ever since he had married Shelina, he was treated like a second-class citizen. He was made fun of and ridiculed in public and in front of common friends. He was treated like he was young and inexperienced. In fact, the couple's neighbors from their Oshiwara apartment say that Shelina used to use Parvez almost like an errand boy, making him buy groceries and drive the family around. Some reports even claim she treated her second husband, Asif Sheikh, the same way and only treated her first husband with any respect. In fact, she introduced Parvez to her first husband, Nadir, as her distant cousin, a matter deeply humiliating to Parvez. Eventually, Shelina also realized Parvez wasn't nearly as wealthy or powerful as he initially seemed to be. She figured out that a lot of his money was stolen, and in reality, he more closely resembled a wannabe politician seduced by a life of money than a successful man. She used to ridicule him for his lack of money and compare his wealth to hers, making him feel inferior. All of these complicated emotions had been boiling inside Parvez. He was slowly reaching his tipping point, and finally tipped over during their January 30th trip to the farmhouse. The family arrived in different groups at the Igatpuri farmhouse. Parvez drove himself and Shelina, while Laila drove all her siblings to the farmhouse in her Mitsubishi Outlander, the same Outlander that was found in Kashmir by the J&K police. The family had planned on staying at the farmhouse for a while because they took a lot of their stuff and their two cats and one dog as well. They wanted to sell off the Igatpuri farmhouse and buy a new, bigger property in Dubai, because some sources claim Laila wanted to marry her boyfriend and move to Dubai, but others claim she was already married. But the point is, the family all wanted to move to Dubai, and so to sell their Igatpuri house, they wanted to be there to work on the deal. But this deal was something Parvez was strongly against. He didn't have a passport, and he felt like the family moving to Dubai was a way to ice him out of the family, to get rid of him forever. A few days after the family reached Igatpuri, on the 9th of February 2011, Shelina spoke to her sister Albana. But what she tells Albana is a little weird. She tells her that she is in Chandigarh with Parvez. Firstly, she doesn't mention the rest of the family she was with, which is super weird. But what is even weirder is the bit about being in Chandigarh. Chandigarh and Igatpuri are a 25-hour-long drive away. They aren't places you casually move between during a holiday. Now, is it possible that they traveled to Chandigarh via air, maybe for something like a meeting with the buyers for their farmhouse, and then returned back to Igatpuri? Where were they killed? I've thought about that possibility. What if this call to Shelina's sister was made while they were actually in Chandigarh for some work? But this call between Shelina and her sister is the last call, last text, last communication any member at the farmhouse made. So ask yourself, is it possible that Parvez and Shelina were in Chandigarh when not one of the 5 kids at the farmhouse used their phones to talk to anybody? The only explanation that makes sense is that this story about being in Chandigarh was a lie. And shortly after this phone call, they were all killed at the farmhouse. So there is that last known communication on the 9th. That night on the 9th, the family decided to hold a barbecue. The weather was perfect. They had the whole family together. They were going to sell the old property. There was no reason not to celebrate. Parvez tells the cops that they all played music and danced and partied together. It was a happy moment. Then at about 1 a.m., Parvez and Shelina retired to their rooms, where Shelina began praising her second husband, Sheikh, and then told Parvez that she had transferred the power of attorney for the disposal of her assets to Sheikh, giving her second husband access and control over all of her major properties, while Parvez stood there looking like a fool. Shelina's soft spot and continued contact with Sheikh had always been a fight between the couple, but this was too much. He felt used, cheated, and discarded. When this fight started, the couple walked out of their room and came down to the ground floor of the house, which is where the fight took a disastrous turn. It was here that he hit her on the back of her head with a metal rod and then stabbed her multiple times with a knife. While all of this was happening, though, the other family members all gathered around on the ground floor, suddenly becoming witnesses to the murder of their mother. Suddenly, with so many people around, Parvez knew his ability to defend himself was lesser than before. So he started to think, who could he call for help? Then it suddenly struck him. He had just appointed a new watchman a few months ago, a watchman who was Kashmiri, just like Parvez. When Parvez called him for help, the watchman Shakir Hussain did not hesitate in being part of the murder. Together, the two men overpowered the 5 women and 1 young man, hitting them all on the head with iron rods first, and then stabbing them with knives repeatedly till they were dead. Shelina was killed first, with 21-year-old Imran killed second, and 29-year-old Laila Khan killed last. The deep fractures found on all of their skulls tell the tale of how much hatred and force was used to kill them all. Now, the cops were still hesitant to believe him, so they put him in the back of their car and began a journey to the farmhouse, preparing themselves for the possibility that inside might be 6 bodies. When the police finally reached the family's sprawling bungalow that now stood burnt and charred to the ground, holding only the memories of a once happy family, Parvez directed the police to a pit in the backyard. The helpers that the police had brought with them began digging the ground, and slowly but surely, one by one, body after body began to emerge from under the ground. Himanshu Roy, Joint Commissioner of Police of Mumbai, said 3 bodies were placed at the bottom of a 12 feet by 8 feet pit, which was about 6 feet deep. The pit covered first with mattresses and pillows and then with stone. Then 3 more bodies were placed and similarly covered, and finally the pit was covered with mud. The stones were used to keep wild animals away. An NDTV article states that there was very little clothing left on the skeletal remains, but it was evident that they were all murdered and buried with jewelry still on the bodies. The bodies in the pit, 1 male body and 5 females, were then matched against DNA samples from Laila's biological father, Nadir Patel, confirming all of their identities as the Patel family. As of June 2021, the case was still pending, with 41 witnesses deposed and the partial testimony of the main investigating officer recorded. Asif Sheikh, Shelina's second husband, was the 5th witness to be examined, and he revealed more jaw-dropping details about the family. He told the courts that Parvez wanted to push all of the girls in the family into prostitution to be able to earn money. In fact, he wanted to help the girls enter the prostitution market in Dubai, a rich clientele where huge sums of money can be made through the work. Quote, Azmina, Zara and Reshma would tell me Parvez always asked them to go to Dubai to earn money, but the girls were not ready. Tak used to harass them and threaten them, he said. Despite decades of standstill in the court case, though, just weeks before this episode will be released, in May of 2024, there was a major development. The Mumbai Sessions Court found Parvez Tak guilty of the murder of Laila Khan, guilty of the murder of her family, a decade after they had disappeared. The judgment on the punishment Parvez will receive is likely to come in the weeks to follow, with prosecutor Pankaj Chavan calling the case rarest of the rare and demanding the death penalty for Tak. Tak and his lawyer, on the other hand, are seeking the minimum sentence for him, life imprisonment, with them arguing that the case was based on only circumstantial evidence, with nothing directly tying Tak to the scene of the crime, arguing that Tak demonstrated good behavior when in prison, and arguing that Tak's family outside the prison would not be able to survive without him since they earn only 5,000 rupees per month.
You can't argue, give me life imprisonment, not murder, and then also say, oh, the evidence was weak.
Precisely.
So on one hand you're saying, yeah, I was guilty.
I did commit this crime.
But on the other hand, you're saying, oh, but the evidence is not good for.
The evidence
Choose
argument
one.
does not. And the court does routinely, based on things like good behavior and circumstances, give reduced sentence. But then you can't say the evidence wasn't enough, right?
Of course, you can't say
Yeah,
both.
you can't say
Also,
both.
I don't care what your behavior was. You stole 2.2 lakhs from
Definitely.
an retired naval officer.
Definitely.
That was just the start. You wanted your own daughters to go into prostitution in Dubai.
Yeah.
But I don't think you've made much moral progress in the last few years.
Completely agree. Whether the courts will see this case the way Aryaan does or will buy his logic, we are yet to see. Clearly, by every standard, Parvez is, or at least was, a sick and a horrible man. But he was also a man who had been pushed, broken, and ridiculed by the woman he had chosen to marry. Shelina's behavior with him, her controlling attitude, her lack of regard, her need to drive him to the edge was unnecessary. He could have been treated with dignity.
Some framework that we hold very dear here at Desi Crime is explanation is not justification.
Precisely.
So nothing justifies
not at all.
Shelina's
It deserves
murder.
maybe the death penalty, yeah.
But Shelina was extremely toxic.
Yeah, not a good partner to have at all.
Not a good partner is an understatement.
Yeah,
I mean,
agreed.
had there not been a murder, I would say she's evil.
I agree.
Right? Except, I mean, she became a victim. But,
Yeah.
but that still that doesn't justify the murder. But one must say that there were a lot of things done in the relationship that were very wrong.
Agreed. But what can or should be done is of no use in this case anymore. 2 entire generations of a family, 6 people are all gone. Their ability to ever live a fulfilling life is all gone. The India Today article speaks of how Laila's favorite Bollywood heroine was Divya Bharti. Laila's dreams of becoming as famous and respected as Divya Bharti are all gone. All Laila got was an end like Divya Bharti's. Abrupt, unfortunate, and undeserved. A day after we recorded this episode, on the 24th of May 2024, Parvez Iqbal Tak was sentenced to death by a Mumbai court for the brutal murder of Laila Khan and her family. On the day of his sentencing, 13 years had passed to the fateful night when he murdered his family in cold blood. For Laila and her family, we hope the last 13 years have been spent in peace. If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Karak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.